Cyprus at Damascus Gate in occupied East Jerusalem. And Harry, any further information or detail on Israel's planned response now after these airstrikes in Gaza?
Yes, we are getting some indications from the Israeli government. We heard from the military spokesman a little bit earlier in the evening. He was talking about preparation for several days' worth of fighting, whether that be in the air or even a ground operation. We've also heard from the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promising a forceful response, saying that Israel did not seek escalation, but that anyone who did seek escalation would feel Israel's might, and talking about the fact that Israeli soldiers, Israeli civilians, and Jerusalem itself and its surrounds had come under attack. If people were wondering, and they were, about the fate of this Monday, the potential for this to be the day that things really blew up after these weeks of simmering disturbances and tensions in Jerusalem, the answer has come, and it's been pretty grim. It has been a very violent day, and that violence felt most so far inside Gaza tonight. The death toll there has gone up to 20. The last figures coming from the Palestinian Health Ministry there. 9 of those dead said to be children. There was one instance where there was an explosion in Beit Hanun. There was some confusion about exactly what was responsible for it. It was around the same time that the Israeli military were talking about a successful targeting of a terror cell. And we have been hearing directly from sources within the Hamas military wing saying that it had been a member of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad who had fired an anti-tank missile at an Israeli civilian jeep at the beginning of this escalation coming from Gaza, that he had been tracked and that he was the source and the target of this airstrike. We've asked the Israeli military for confirmation of that. So far, none has been forthcoming. So there remains a lot of activity in and around Gaza, rockets coming out, Israeli airstrikes going in, and the promise from Israel, from its government and its military, of more to come. We've also seen the situation in Sheikh Jarrah, the neighborhood where there are Palestinian refugees threatened with eviction. More tension there today as Israeli politicians from both sides of the argument were scuffling. We've seen the cancellation of the Jerusalem Day March, which looked liable to really create potential violent and dangerous scenes between the two communities here. That was cancelled after the scenes that began the day on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, where Israeli troops, Israeli forces moved in great number with great force, and we saw them using stun grenades, rubber-coated steel bullets, batons, tear gas against Palestinians who were using rocks and pieces of furniture to fight them. And so it's been a day when really the tipping point has been reached, and we're in very dangerous territory now.
All right, thank you very much, Harry Fawcett in East Jerusalem. Now let's speak to Nida Ibrahim in Ramallah. And Nida, Harry saying that obviously the atmosphere now very volatile, and what's interesting is how we are seeing people take to the streets in other locations elsewhere in solidarity with protesters in East Jerusalem. Tell us about that.
In fact, there is one protest that is happening right now in Al-Manara Square in Ramallah. I'm going to ask our cameraman Joseph to pan to some of the protesters that we're seeing here in downtown Ramallah. Some of them have started marching throughout the city, but we are seeing a part that is still in the main square chanting slogans. Some of the things we've heard them say is that they are saluting Al-Qassam brigades for the rocket attacks that were launched from the Gaza Strip. And we've heard them chanting slogans calling for freedom to Palestinians, those in Sheikh Jarrah and those who are in Al-Aqsa. Some of these protesters have called for going to confrontation points with the Israeli military. Remember that we are living in an occupied territory. There are lots and lots of Israeli military checkpoints in the West Bank, which is why some of these protesters are calling for Palestinians to go there and voice their anger. Miriam, they are wary of using the word solidarity because they say that they are one people, they have one cause, and that although they cannot go to occupied East Jerusalem because they're disconnected from it by the Israeli military checkpoints, they have to have permits to enter it, but they want to show that they are one people and they have the same cause and that they are fighting the same Israeli violations. I should note that there is some sort of a split in the street. While we're hearing these Palestinians chanting in support of the rocket attacks, we've seen some Palestinians on social media saying that when it comes to military power, the power between Israel and the Palestinians, they cannot really beat Israel. It has the upper hand, and they believe that this kind of escalation is going to be harming further more Palestinians, and they want to see more of a popular resistance, and like the scenes we've seen in occupied East Jerusalem. If you ask the protesters here, they would tell you that the Palestinian Authority isn't doing much. But when it comes to Palestinian officials, they would tell you that they are studying what options they have. They have called upon the international community to intervene, the UN, the Arab League. But there is some sort of a disappointment. We've heard from one Palestinian official. He's a member of the executive committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And he says the international community's condemnations is not enough to curb Israel. And he also believes that this is Netanyahu's way of escalating the situation to win more right-wing votes and to kind of export his political failure to form a government and kind of lobby these right-wingers in case he goes for or another cycle of elections. So the mood here is that of anger, frustration, but some were telling us that they were hopeful that the acts of Palestinians in East Jerusalem were able to quell the Israelis. They were able to delay the hearing of the eviction of Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. So there is some source of hope, but still there is a lot of anger and frustration.
Thank you very much. Nida Ibrahim reporting to us from Ramallah. Thank you, Nida. So let's go to the US now, because our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett standing by there. And so hearing Kimberly about really a number of different events coming together, those Sheikh Jarrah evictions, the Al-Aqsa raid, and now airstrikes in Gaza. There is international concern about a wider conflict. What is the White House saying then?
Yeah, the White House, as well as the State Department and the Pentagon, all talking about the escalation in recent hours. The State Department taking the lead for now, saying that the United States is remaining engaged, it is urging calm, and recognizes that the situation on the ground is fluid and rapidly changing. There are concerns in the U.S. about extended violence, and that's why the White House is continuing to monitor the situation. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying that the #1 goal of the United States right now is for there to be de-escalation.
We are continuing to closely monitor the violence in Israel. We have serious concerns about the situation, including violent confrontations that we've seen over the last few days, as you noted, an escalation earlier today. You also noted, Amr, that in a call over the weekend with his Israeli counterpart, our National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan reiterated concerns about the potential evictions of Palestinian families from their homes, and they agreed that the launching of rocket attacks and incendiary balloons from Gaza towards Israel is unacceptable and must be condemned. So this is something that our national security team is closely monitoring. Obviously, across government, certainly the president is kept abreast and is watching closely as well.
Now, the Biden administration is not ruling out in the long term that it may take a more active mediating role. But in the short term, it says that it is looking to promote calm in Jerusalem. Having said that, to that end, as you heard there, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki noting that it is the view of the United States that the rocket attacks from Gaza into Israel are, in their words, unacceptable. And to that end, the Pentagon spokesperson saying in just the last hour or so that it is the goal of the United States to continue to ensure that Israel has all of what it needs in order to defend itself from those attacks.
Thank you very much. From the White House, Kimberly Halkett. Thanks, Kimberly. Well, now, in terms of the international reaction, the UN Secretary General spokesperson says that Antonio Guterres is urging parties to exercise restraint, but specifically condemned rockets launched into Israel from Gaza.
The Secretary General is following with deep concern the latest security developments, which risk triggering yet another dangerous escalation, leading to further violence and loss of lives. He condemns in the strongest terms the launching of rockets from Gaza into Israel, which have reportedly been claimed by Hamas, particularly the targeting of civilian population centers. He urges all parties to exercise maximum restraint. The special coordinator, Mr. Van Island, is working closely with all concerned parties to restore calm. His office is monitoring the situation closely.
Well, Mustafa Barghouti is the Secretary General of the Palestinian National Initiative and former Palestinian Information Minister, joins us via Skype from occupied East Jerusalem. You were getting a flavour of the international reaction just there. How urgent is some sort of international leadership or initiative right now to prevent any further escalation in the situation, or is it perhaps too late for that?
No, it's not, and it's been urgent for a long time. The problem is that we do not need those who will come and equate us with the occupiers. We cannot accept anymore those who will come and say you're equally guilty and equate between the occupier and the occupied, the oppressor and the oppressed. What we need is an international intervention which holds Israel accountable for its war crimes that it is conducting against the Palestinian people. We need an intervention which threatens Israel with boycott, divestment and sanctions as long as it continues its occupation and the system of racial discrimination and apartheid that it is practicing against Palestinians, including acts of ethnic cleansing, as they are planning in Sheikh Jarrah by evicting people from their homes for the second time after they've been ethnically cleansed in 1948.
And in the absence of those measures that you mentioned, what then?
Well, in my opinion, we have found our way. I mean, the way of resistance and the way of struggle. And I think we are departing now from a long illusion called Oslo process, where the hopes were in an agreement that allowed Israel to increase the number of settlers from 110,000 to 750,000, and allowed Israel to cut the West Bank in 224 small islands and ghettos, and to make Gaza, besieged Gaza, as the largest open prison in the world. This has to change, and I think what Palestinians have shown in Jerusalem is our ability to conduct peaceful, non-violent resistance, at the same time being able to defend ourselves when we are attacked. We have had 600 injuries during the last 2 days at the hand of the Israeli army. 6 people have lost their eyes. And of course, you know that Israel is now attacking Gaza. There are 20 people killed, and about 9 of them are children. But that will not stop from resisting. I think what we have found in the people of Jerusalem is something that reminds us of the struggle of Martin Luther King and in the United States for justice and freedom.
Can I ask you, Mr. Barghouti, can I pick up on that point that you're making there? Because we were hearing from our correspondent in East Jerusalem, but also reports from Ramallah there, and people taking part in protests in a number of different places, Ramallah, Gaza, Nazareth. How then would you describe this momentum? What are we seeing emerging across Palestinian society now?
What you see is probably a new intifada, a new popular uprising against injustice and against occupation and against persecution and oppression, and against the system of apartheid, which is considered by international law as crimes against humanity. And it's an act of resistance against the annexation of East Jerusalem, which is illegal by international law, and which most of the countries of the world consider illegal. So this is a new path for Palestinians. I know we have to sacrifice, and I know we don't have...
Mr. Barghouti, apologies for interrupting you, but we're just going to hear now from U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaking.
What I know will be extremely constructive and useful conversation between two friends and two allies, particularly in this very, very critical situation. We're all trying to tackle the extremely dangerous situation in Jerusalem. We repeatedly said in Jordan that Jerusalem is a red line, and that maintaining peace and stability in Jerusalem is key. Our focus right now on ensuring that the escalation stops, and for that to happen, we do believe that all illegal and provocative measures against either the peoples of Sheikh Jarrah or in terms of violations into Al-Haram must stop. Status quo needs to be preserved, and the rights of the Palestinians need to be respected, so that we calm the situation and create the political horizon that the US, Jordan, all of us want to see towards a lasting, comprehensive peace that would address the rights of all peoples on the basis of the two-state solution. So today, priority is stop the escalation, make sure that international law is respected, rights of Palestinians, rights of worshippers are upheld, status quo is preserved, and move forward towards creating that political horizon. The United States has a leading role to play. It has the leading role to play, in fact, in terms of trying to bring about the peace and stability that we all want. We all believe in peace as a strategic choice. Nobody's doing anybody a favor by opting for peace. It's a right for all. We know the formula, the two-state solution is the one that will get us there. And again, we do look forward to the leadership of the United States at this effort, because this is something that is a common objective for all of us. As the Secretary said, Jordan and the United States have enjoyed a tremendously strong historical partnership. This is a partnership of which we are proud. His Majesty King Abdullah is looking forward to coming here and engaging with the President as well and the rest of the administration on how we can move forward, not just in the interest of both of our countries, but also in the interest of peace, stability, prosperity in the region. We're proud of this relationship, and we do look forward to what I know will be extremely useful and important discussions with the Secretary on, again, addressing the challenges and dangerous situation in the West Bank and Jerusalem right now, but also in the rest of the region. We have a lot of good work that we do together, from fighting terrorism to supporting the stability in Iraq, looking for answers to political solutions to the crises in Syria, Libya, and Yemen. And again, in all that, we're partners. We seek the same objective, and we'll continue to be working together. So again, sir, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. And on behalf of His Majesty, on behalf of all of us in Jordan, a big thank you to the United States for the tremendous support that it has shown the kingdom historically, and in terms of trying to deal with the many challenges that we are facing, unfortunately, in a very troubled part of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, are you concerned about the lack of proportionality?
Okay, so we're actually just hearing there from Jordan's Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi speaking alongside the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and he was just speaking about the situation that's been playing out in the Palestinian territories and Israel. He said that the rocket attacks on Israel should stop now, and all sides need to take steps to de-escalate the situation. Obviously, there is concern about there being a further violence and more tension there. In Gaza, 20 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes. Those airstrikes in response to rocket attacks fired against Israel. And then earlier on, the Israeli security forces entered the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound again for the second time in the space of a few days. The Palestinian Red Crescent saying that more than 300 Palestinians were injured when the site was stormed.